The accident. Before I don't know the rules. Now I know the rules. Next World Cup, I never touch the World Cup. I go to, of course, stadium, see the match, but I never touch again.
You ever seen someone wreck their own billion-dollar empire so bad it makes you wonder if they were ever actually talented at all? That's Salt Bae right now, the man who sprinkled salt like it was gold dust and somehow turned it into a luxury brand that had A-listers lining up for a selfie. But fast forward to today, and his entire restaurant chain is collapsing quicker than his reputation after that World Cup stunt that had everyone cringing online. This guy went from slicing steak beside Leonardo DiCaprio and David Beckham to being literally kicked out of Champions League after parties like some random dude who snuck past security. The fall off is wild. And honestly, it didn't happen overnight. This was a slow burn of arrogance, bad PR, and total disconnect from reality. Because while his businesses were bleeding money and closing doors, Salt Bae was too busy chasing clout on the sidelines of football matches, acting like he was part of the starting lineup. It's pure main character syndrome with a side of public meltdown, and the internet's having a field day with it. Memes, jokes, call-outs, people can't get enough. The same fans who once worshipped his dramatic salt flick are now clowning him for trying way too hard to stay relevant. But to really understand how Salt Bae went from viral icon to walking punchline, we gotta roll it back to 2017. When the world still thought sprinkling salt in slow motion was peak coolness and his empire actually looked unstoppable. Salt Bae wasn't always this global meme-turned-disaster. He was just a regular butcher in Istanbul until one random day he posted a 36-second clip of himself sprinkling salt down his arm like it was an Olympic event. That tiny clip exploded with over 16 million views, and overnight, he went from slicing meat behind a counter to slicing steak for millionaires. Suddenly, every celebrity on the planet wanted a piece of that glittery steak action, paying absurd prices just to watch him do the move. It was internet culture gone deluxe, luxury dining mixed with viral fame. For a hot minute, it worked like magic. He was charging over $1,000 for gold-covered steaks that, let's be real, used $10 gold leaf you could grab off Amazon. But nobody cared, because people weren't paying for taste. They were paying for status. That one perfect Instagram post, that slow-motion sprinkle, that proof they'd been blessed by the viral chef himself, Salt Bae became less of a chef and more of a tourist attraction, a walking brand. His spots in Dubai, Miami, London, and New York were packed with influencers flashing cash like it was Monopoly money just for a quick video. Cameras everywhere, steaks sparkling, egos inflated. It was chaos dressed as fine dining. But here's the thing about turning your career into a meme. Memes have expiration dates, and Salt Bae started to rot the second he believed he was untouchable. The first massive red flag hit in 2018 when he proudly posted a video of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro dining in his Istanbul restaurant while millions of Venezuelans were starving through one of the country's worst crises ever. That post didn't just spark outrage, it lit his reputation on fire. But Salt Bae wasn't out here learning lessons. He was out here serving gold-plated steaks to a literal dictator and posting it like it was a flex. The internet lost its mind instantly, and the backlash hit harder than one of his butcher knives. People were furious, and rightfully so. But instead of backing off and reflecting, Salt Bae doubled down like controversy was part of his brand. Then came the moment that completely nuked his reputation. The 2022 World Cup final, December 18th, Argentina had just won one of the most emotional, historic matches in football history. Players were crying, celebrating, holding that sacred trophy, and out of nowhere, here comes Salt Bae, sliding onto the pitch like he was part of the team. He started grabbing players, pulling them into selfies they clearly didn't want. And then, the ultimate disrespect, he snatched the World Cup trophy out of their hands just to pose for the cameras. The audacity was unreal. You could literally read the disgust on Messi's face. He looked like he wanted to vanish on the spot. Every fan watching could feel how awkward it was, but Salt Bae was too lost in his own spotlight to even notice. He was performing like the cameras were rolling for his next viral clip, completely oblivious that he'd just embarrassed himself on the biggest stage in sports. The internet obliterated him for it. Memes, articles, think pieces, everyone was roasting him. FIFA even launched a full-on investigation and permanently banned him from all future official events. That's right, the same man who once had A-listers and athletes lining up for gold stakes was now blacklisted from major sports gatherings. And you'd think after being humiliated worldwide, he'd chill out, right? Nope. Just months later, Salt Bae tried to crash a Champions League after party and got physically escorted out by security like some random gate crasher who couldn't take a hint. This man went from dining with legends to being dragged out by bouncers. Talk about a downfall. He tried to laugh it off, acting like nothing happened, but the secondhand embarrassment was painful. Viewers couldn't even watch without cringing. But while Salt Bae was out here embarrassing himself on the world stage, his restaurant empire was silently crumbling behind the scenes, and the numbers don't lie. When you build your business on flashy theatrics instead of real flavor, people eventually wake up to the scam. His New York location got absolutely torched by food critics. One even called it New York's worst restaurant. Think about that. In a city with over 20,000 restaurants, his was ranked near the bottom. The food, overpriced and underwhelming. People were paying hundreds, sometimes thousands, just to eat steak that tasted like regret. The London branch didn't fare much better, scraping a measly 2-star rating on TripAdvisor and landing near the bottom of 23,000 restaurants. Customers complained that the food was bland, the service was robotic, and the whole place felt like a tourist trap dressed up as fine dining. But the real nightmare came from the inside. His former employees started speaking out, and the stories were brutal. Multiple lawsuits exposed a workplace that was allegedly toxic to the core. Workers claimed Salt Bae's management withheld tips, made them grind through 72-hour weeks with no overtime, and created an environment where people were too scared to say a word. One case even led to a $230,000 settlement, and right after that, he reportedly fired the employees who had the courage to speak up. Talk about bad optics. It made him look ruthless and out of touch. And just when it couldn't get any worse, it did. The most horrifying incident happened during one of his famous tableside fire shows. In 2018, 4 diners were injured when a burst of flames went wrong, including a young model who suffered third-degree burns on over 35% of her body. The whole thing was supposed to be for show, flashy, dramatic, viral-worthy, but it turned into a tragic reminder that when the focus is all on the spectacle, safety goes right out the window. When the flames of his scandals got too hot, did Salt Bae take accountability? Of course not. Instead of owning up or even showing a shred of remorse, the man went radio silent. No apology, no statement, nothing. It was like he thought if he ignored it long enough, the world would just forget. But the internet doesn't forget, and neither do the people who got hurt. While he was pretending everything was fine, the public was piecing together the truth and realizing just how deep the mess went. Soon, customers started asking the questions everyone had been too blinded by gold dust to notice. Why am I paying $55 for a Heineken? Why is a single Red Bull $30? And most importantly, what exactly am I paying for besides watching a sweaty guy sprinkle salt like he's auditioning for a meme? The so-called luxury experience that once felt exclusive now looked like a straight-up scam. People weren't impressed anymore. They were insulted, and when the illusion breaks, so does the hype. The numbers started speaking louder than his silence, and the truth was brutal. Salt Bae's US empire shrank from 7 locations down to just 2 in only a couple of years. His Beverly Hills flagship, once the pride of his empire, officially shut its doors in June 2025. The London branch saw profits nosedive by over 30%, and even his Dubai restaurants, once packed with billionaires and influencers, were struggling to fill tables. And let's be clear, these weren't just a few bad months or seasonal slowdowns. This was a systematic collapse, the downfall of a brand that lost its soul, its spark, and its credibility with the very people who made it famous. Customers had moved on, critics had stopped caring, and the spectacle had lost its shine. So, in a last-ditch move that completely contradicted his entire brand, Salt Bae did something desperate. Something that screamed panic. The man who built his empire on exclusivity, luxury, and sky-high prices suddenly slashed prices like he was running a clearance sale at a fast food joint. It was a full-on identity crisis, proof that even Salt Bae knew his golden empire had turned to dust. The same man who once proudly said, "Quality is never expensive, you know," suddenly started throwing discounts like it was a clearance sale at a mall. The irony was painful. It was the ultimate confession that his over-the-top prices were never about quality. They were about ego, hype, and illusion. And even with those new low prices, nobody was lining up anymore. The public had moved on, the hype was dead, and the trust was completely gone. But the saddest part of this whole downfall, watching Salt Bae still pretend everything was fine. Even as his restaurants were shutting down one by one, he was out here posting receipts of massive bills like they were trophies, flexing like it was still 2017. It was pure denial. A man clinging to a fantasy while reality was burning all around him. He kept trying to crash celebrity parties, sneak into exclusive events, and act like he was still the main character when, in truth, his audience had already switched the channel. It's almost tragic, but also poetic. Salt Bae had everything anyone could dream of handed to him on a silver platter. Viral fame, celebrity fans, a global empire, millions in revenue, and an audience that worshipped him. All he had to do was stay humble, make good food, and treat people right. That's it. But instead, he went full ego mode, chasing clout, picking drama, and burning bridges faster than he could build them. He mistook internet fame for real respect, and that's where it all fell apart. Because fame fades, skill doesn't. The internet will hype you up one day and roast you the next. And Salt Bae learned that lesson the hardest way possible. His downfall wasn't bad luck or cancel culture, it was self-inflicted every step of the way. So the real takeaway here isn't just about Salt Bae, it's a warning to anyone who thinks going viral equals having talent. Because when the cameras stop rolling, you're left with what you actually built. And in his case, it turns out there wasn't much left to stand on. When you start chasing performance over substance, this is exactly how it ends. Salt Bae built his entire empire on a 36-second video, one flashy moment that made him a meme, a millionaire, and a global sensation. But over the years, he managed to destroy it all with bad decisions, toxic behavior, and an ego so inflated it could have had its own zip code. He thought being a meme made him untouchable, but reality hit hard, and it hit fast. Now, the man who once served gold-covered steaks to A-listers is left with a handful of struggling restaurants and a reputation so shattered it might never recover. The internet that once hyped him up now uses him as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you start believing your own viral fame. He's no longer the icon he once was, just another washed-up influencer desperately clinging to a spotlight that's already faded. Salt Bae's story is proof that you can't build a legacy on showmanship alone. Eventually, people see through the sparkle and realize there's nothing solid underneath. He went from viral legend to living lesson, from gold steaks to empty tables. The salt that once made him famous has now rubbed straight into the wound. So yeah, it really does look like Salt Bae has finally lost it all. But what do you think? Can he ever bounce back from this, or is it game over for the Salt King? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, share, and comment, and I'll see you in the next one.